Hey everyone, the Classic Burning Crusade Prepatch is upon us, and with that, a lot of players' main goal will be to get their characters to 60 as fast as possible, since the expansion drops a couple weeks later, or simply level them at their own pace through Azeroth even after the expansion drops. If you're in either of these situations, I got you covered. Today, we're gonna talk about the two main methods to get from 1 to 60 as fast as possible in TBC. The first method is slower but more accessible, which is questing, and the second one is faster but more niche, which is boosting. Also, a lot of people will be leveling Draenei and Blood Elves during the next few weeks, but this guide applies to every race in the game. So with that, let's get into the video. Before we talk about either method and how to execute them effectively and efficiently, we need to talk about the leveling changes that will happen the moment the Prepatch drops. There's three main changes. First, the experience bar squish. While leveling from 1 to 60 during TBC, either in the Prepatch or during the actual expansion, you'll notice that it now requires way less XP to level up. From 1 to 10, there's actually no changes, but starting from level 11, you'll see a 1.1% reduction in experience needed, and that will ramp up each level until level 28, where it reaches its cap of 18% reduction. The second change is that quests now reward you with more experience. This is on a quest per quest basis. Some have higher increase than others, and some have no increase at all, but you'll find that most quests will now give you about 40% more experience compared to how much they give in Classic WoW. Finally, dungeons. You'll find that a lot of dungeons have had their level range narrowed down. For example, during Classic WoW, you'd see that Shadowfang Keep had mobs ranging from levels 18 to 25. That's now changed in TBC. The mobs in Shadowfang Keep will be ranging from levels 18 to 21. This will affect dungeon boosting to an extent, but keep in mind that not all dungeons have been affected this way. Stockades or Deadmines, for example, already had pretty narrow level ranges, so you won't see any difference on those. Now there's also some other minor changes that will increase your leveling speed, like the fact that you can now get your first mount at level 30 instead of 40, or the fact that a lot of elite mobs in the outside world have now been made non-elite to accommodate for solo play, like the outside dungeon in Redridge Mountain for example, or the fact that a lot of items have been re-itemized to make them more useful. So all in all, with all those changes taken into consideration, you're looking at around a 30% leveling speed improvement compared to Classic if you're leveling through questing, and around a 20% improvement if you're leveling through boosting. So with that, let's now talk about the first method which most players will go with, questing. So questing is pretty straightforward, right? You pick a quest, you do it, you turn it in, rinse and repeat until you're 60. But the main thing here is that it will be way easier and way faster to do so. With all the improvements we talked about earlier, grinding is pretty much a thing of the past. If you leveled in Classic, you might have noticed that there isn't enough quests to get you to 60, or at least not enough worthwhile quests. So you'll resolve to grinding quite a lot. So yeah, that's thankfully not the case anymore. Thanks to everything we talked about and the fact that Blizzard even added new questing hubs like Mod's Pocket and Dustwallow Marsh to really make leveling smoother and simpler. While questing, I also like to follow an in-game leveling guide, to just completely turn off my brain, follow an arrow, and AFK watching YouTube or Netflix or something. Zygor is great for doing that, but it's a paid add-on, and it's quite pricey. I honestly think that they could get more customers and make more money overall if they just cut the price in half, but I digress. If you're looking for a free alternative to Zygor, you can try Guidelime. This guide allows the community to make guides themselves and integrate them to the add-on. Just look for Guidelime on CurseForge and try to find a recently updated guide for it. Dungeons. The same advice that applied during Classic still applies here. Dungeons are only really worth doing if you have enough quests to do inside of them. Otherwise, the experience you gain from killing the mobs inside with a regular group is really not worth it, and you could get way more from just questing outside. Keep in mind, however, that dungeons do reward you with powerful gear, even more powerful than it is in vanilla thanks to the re-itemization of many items. So consider that, especially for example if there's an extremely strong weapon that you could get from that dungeon that you know would boost your leveling speed significantly. There's also the fact that summoning stones are now a thing, so getting everyone to the dungeon will be significantly faster now. One last thing to note is that you can actually get to 58 and leave it there. Getting from 58 to 60 is much faster in Outland than it is in Azeroth, and you will still have enough quests to get to Zangarmarsh if you do that. For this reason, if you reach 58 after the Dark Portal opens on June 1st, I would recommend jumping right into Hellfire Peninsula. But if you manage to reach 58 during the pre-patch, you can just keep going to 60 if you want. Just know that it will be way faster to do so in Hellfire Peninsula once the portal opens. So that's for questing, the slower but easier way to get to 60. Let's now move on to boosting, the faster but harder to get into method for getting to 60. So boosting is what a lot of high-end guilds and players will be doing to reach 60 ASAP. The concept is simple. Get one level 60 or 70 if you're in TBC, highly geared character along with 4 other low-level characters in a group and run a specific set of dungeons for a specific amount of levels. Move on to the next level. Do that until the dungeon doesn't give XP anymore, move to the next one, rinse and repeat until the low levels are all 60. You can manage to get into a boosting group in one of two ways, by either paying your booster with gold or by being in a high-end guild that will be doing these during pre-patch. The second option is straightforward, but not everyone is in a high-end guild. And the first option will cost you a lot the higher level you get, especially during pre-patch. Boosting will be on super high demand and every booster will be busy boosting people, so if you're gonna pay gold for this, I'd recommend finding someone sooner rather than later. So that's the theory. Let's now see how it actually plays out. First, you may notice that there's no dungeons from levels 1 to 6 or 10 if you're Alliance. So for this reason, if you want to really optimize every minute of leveling, you could get boosted by a hunter from level 1 to 10. Get a hunter friend, ask him to group up with a low level out of range character in the same zone, and then tag every mob you see and get the hunter to one-shot them with his pet. I know it's weird, but that's how it works. You'll be able to get to level 10 or 6 if you're Horde very fast if you get boosted this way, but this is optional obviously. So the reason you want to get to level 6 or 10 is to enter the next dungeon, which would be Ragefire Chasm at level 6 for Horde or Dead Mines at level 10 for Alliance. Note that I will be giving some level ranges here, but they're here as a guide. Some people decide to enter them sooner or later, and some people decide to leave them sooner or later, so the choice is yours. So you'll be getting boosted in Dead Mines or RFK until level 15. Try to stay close to your booster, but without getting too close and risk dying either, especially in Dead Mines. There's some packs of mobs that spawn after you kill a specific boss, so you can't just stay far behind your booster or you'll risk aggroing these. It's also worth staying on the move to loot the mobs that your booster is killing to gear up a little bit while getting boosted, in case you have to move to questing at some point, and especially at level 60 to not be left completely naked. You could also just AFK at the entrance, but that's not really an option for a lot of these dungeons. If the mobs die too far out of range from you, you'll not receive any XP. The range is quite far, however. The next dungeon is either Shadowfang Keep or Stockades from 15 to 25. SFK, as mentioned earlier, is a dungeon that got affected by a level range squish in TBC. The mobs will range from 18 to 21, so you may want to move to Scarlet Monastery sooner for this one. As for Stockades, it's a really fast and straightforward dungeon. You can even AFK at the entrance and still receive the experience from all the mobs no matter where they die. So next, from 25 to 38, we have Scarlet Monastery. This is where your booster starts to need to be skilled to boost you, and where this starts giving you a ton of XP depending on how efficient the booster is. The main wings people usually get boosted on is either Cathedral, Armory, or Library. All of those are good and all of them have their pros and cons, but as someone getting boosted, just leave the rest to your booster, and again, simply run behind and collect the items to gear up while getting boosted. From 38 to 52, it's time to go to Marathon. Some people prefer to stay in SM until 40 or 42, as Mara XP only really starts to rev up around the early level 40s. But that's up to you. If you're bored of SM, just move to Mara ASAP, otherwise you can stay in SM if you want. Mara is not an easy dungeon to solo as a booster, especially at 60, so there's going to be fewer players who have the ability to boost you here, hence why the price to get boosted will start to significantly gradually rise. And then finally, from 52 to 60, there's Zul'Gurub. One thing to note with ZG is that in the later levels, you'll actually start to get less XP per mob as an individual player the more players there is in your group. So for this reason, boosters usually charge more the less people there is in their group. So if you want to level fast, you can ask your booster to only boost you personally for a premium price. If you want to save gold, you can just join along with 3 other players. But yeah, as I said earlier, you can actually stop at level 58 if you want, as questing in Hellfire Peninsula is going to be way faster, but you could also just keep going to 60 if you want, especially if it's pre-patch and you want to gear up your character a little bit. So that's boosting. Pretty straightforward, harder to get into, more boring to do, but generally way faster than questing. Whereas questing will cost nothing and can be done solo, but will be significantly slower than getting boosted. You have 2 weeks to get to 60 if you're doing this during the pre-patch, or an infinite amount of time in TBC depending on what your goal is. So the choice is yours on what method to choose. You could also do a mix of the two if you prefer to not completely get bored of one or the other. And with that, this marks the end of this video. I hope you found it interesting or entertaining. If you did, give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more TBC content like this. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.